In this lesson, we'll focus specifically on how to read and analyze passages on the GED RLA section. Reading comprehension isn't just about reading fast or understanding words. It's about breaking down what the text is saying, how it's structured, and why the author wrote it. This lesson will help you sharpen the exact reading strategies needed to succeed on test day. Let's begin with a quick look at what reading comprehension on the GED is all about. Reading comprehension questions on the GED focus on extracting meaning, interpreting structure, and evaluating claims in both literary and informational texts. You'll be asked to understand what is said, figure out how it's said, and judge why it matters. Here's something important to note. There will be no essay or writing required in this part, only reading and answering multiple choice or drag-and-drop style questions. Now that you know what reading comprehension is, let's move on to the next key area. The GED includes two major types of reading passages. 1. Literary passages. These are fictional stories or excerpts from novels. They often involve characters, dialogue, and a narrative arc. Expect questions about character motivation, theme, mood and tone, conflict and resolution. 2. Informational passages. These are nonfiction texts like newspaper articles, essays, or scientific texts. Questions often focus on author's argument or purpose, text structure, use of evidence, fact versus opinion. Let's keep going. Understanding these passage types is key to answering GED questions with confidence. You've seen the types of passages. Now, let's talk about how to approach them effectively. Here are strategies that make a difference during the exam. 1. Preview before reading. Skim the first and last sentences of the passage and the first question. This gives you a target to read toward. 2. Annotate the text mentally. You can't write on the screen during the test, but train yourself to mentally note things like, who is speaking? What is the main idea? What shift in tone or topic happens? 3. Find signal words. Words like, however, in contrast, for example, and, as a result, indicate important relationships between ideas. 4. Don't read for memorization. You can go back to the passage. Focus on locating and interpreting rather than memorizing details. Now that you know how to read actively, let's shift our focus to the skills that show up most often on the GED. These are the high-yield reading comprehension skills you need to master. First, we have understanding the main idea. Always ask yourself, what is the passage mostly about? And, what's the author trying to tell me? This helps center your reading. Next, pay close attention to identifying supporting details. These are the facts, examples, or quotes that explain or back up the main idea. If you can spot them, you'll have a better handle on what the author is trying to say. Another key skill is author's purpose. Think about why the author wrote the passage. Is it to inform, persuade, entertain, or explain something? Recognizing this can help guide how you interpret the tone and intent. Moving on, let's talk about making inferences. This means using logic and context clues to figure out what the text implies, but doesn't state directly. For example, if a character sighs and looks at the clock, you can infer they're probably impatient or bored, even if the text doesn't say it outright. In addition, you'll need to be good at analyzing text structure. That means recognizing how a passage is organized. Is it cause and effect, compare and contrast, problem and solution, or just chronological order? Understanding the structure helps you navigate the passage and predict what might come next. Finally, we come to evaluating claims and evidence, especially common in informational texts. Here, ask questions like, is the claim backed up by solid facts? Is the author using real examples or just opinions? These core skills show up again and again, so sharpening them gives you a real edge on test day. Now that you know the core reading skills, let's look at the kinds of questions you'll actually see on test day. Understanding the format ahead of time will help you stay calm and confident. First, multiple choice. Pick the best answer. Often, two answers seem right. so use evidence from the passage to decide. Next, drag and drop. You may need to sort sentences into categories, sequence events, or match evidence to claims. Finally, evidence-based pairs. First, answer a question about an idea. Then, choose the part of the text that best supports that idea. Before we wrap up, it's important to watch out for a few common mistakes that can cost you points on the test. Here's what to avoid. First, don't assume knowledge. Base every answer only on the passage. Second, don't rush. Read carefully. Even one word can change the meaning. Lastly, don't overthink. The best answer is usually clearly supported by the passage. To wrap things up, let's quickly review what you've learned in this lesson. You'll read both literary and informational passages on the GED. Remember, focus on skills like finding main ideas, making inferences, and analyzing structure. Also, use active reading strategies to stay engaged and save time. Be prepared for GED-style formats like evidence-based pairs and drag and drop. And finally, always practice interpreting only what is stated or strongly implied in the passage, not outside knowledge.